Hello, welcome. Welcome. This is the global community for adults who are healing CPTSD. My name is Athena, and I will be facilitating our time together this evening. I'm so glad you've chosen to access this resource. If you're listening to this on a replay, your presence with us is felt and valued, regardless of your ability to be here with us live. And every single time you choose to watch or listen to one of the replays, or leave a comment, or you decide to vote on a video, thumbs up or thumbs down, each time you do that, it helps this YouTube channel to reach more survivors of complex PTSD. And for that, I just want to say thank you. This channel is made possible by you. And before we get too far in, and before I pause and say hello to everybody, it's so good to see you all. Hello. I want to remind you that this YouTube channel is made possible by the Foundation for Post-Traumatic Healing and Complex Trauma Research, also known as CPTSDFoundation.org. And many of you found us through the foundation, and many of our community members away from social media over at the foundation found community because of this YouTube channel. So it's this beautiful feedback loop of being able to attend here and feeling warmly welcomed, fully acknowledged, validated, seen, heard, appreciated, all within the context of safe enoughness. Just for about 30 minutes or so here once a week. We've all been showing up here for over 10 years, almost 11 years now, once a week. So thank you for your presence. Thank you for being here. And before I forget, there is a link to the foundation. If you'd like to join us away from social media, we have groups like this where we get together and we have open discussions twice a day, every day, Monday through Friday, and then a couple times on weekends as well. So thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, and there's a code that is special. It was created by my team especially for our Monday night group here on YouTube. And the code, if you click the link, the code is, I think it's Monday 50, no spaces. MONDAY 50. It's like 50% off. So instead of it being like $9.99, it's like $5. And I look forward to seeing you there. And if I don't see you there, that's okay. I'll be back here next Monday and every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. So I want to, if I can get my chat box to work, I want to say hello to everyone who's here. Hello, Jeffrey Sherman. I'm waving back to you and sending you hearts and smiles. Hello, Candida. Waving back to you. Hello, Craig. I'm sending you hugs. Hello, Jen. Hello, Greg. Am I meeting you for the very first time? We warmly welcome you. Welcome, welcome. We are a very welcoming bunch. Hello, John Harvey. Hello. So glad to see you. Hello, Mary. Hello, Eliska Lieska. Hello, hello. I feel like I might have met you once before. Or someone else has a banana emoji. Regardless, we are so glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. And a warm welcome to anyone else I didn't greet by name. So glad you're here. Hello to Adria. Hello. I feel like I might have met you before, and I feel like I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I hope it's Adria, otherwise it's Adria. Adria. I feel like it's Adria. Anyway, I'm so grateful that each of you are all here. Hello, welcome. So a special thank you to John Harvey. You'll see his name lit up in blue with a little wrench next to it. Thank you for the cake. Thank you for the sweets, the ice cream, and the donuts, and all of the good snacks, John Harvey. I rely on you for sustenance every single week. John Harvey says, today is great for ice cream. Yes, it is. So a very special thank you to John Harvey for keeping our chat box a safe enough place. And without you and all of your Blue Wrench crew-ness, we would not be able to gather together here every single week. So thank you. As many of you know, we are currently doing a weekly discussion on the topic of Pete Walker's most recent book on holistically treating complex PTSD, a 6-dimensional approach. And we are currently in the trying to think of which one of the 6 dimensions we're in right now. I know we are talking about psychoeducation around different forms of abuse, and we're also transitioning into grieving. And grieving is a huge part for many of you who are a Pete Walker fan, as I am. His book, titled The Tao of Fully Feeling, is all about learning how to sit with and hold space for all of the different levels of pain that we have experienced throughout our lives as a result of CPTSD. And I can't tell you how normalizing and how stabilizing and acknowledging and validating and how cathartic it is to have words to put with things that have happened in our lives. Like it's almost like being given permission. It's like, being given permission to feel a lot of the big feelings that come up during our healing journey. So that is where we're at in the book right now. And I want to pause, and I want to acknowledge specifically those of us here in our community who were shamed by any less than loving caregivers, shamed for having any emotion that wasn't whatever emotion they wanted us to have at the moment. So what that might look like, at least for me, what it looked like was if a rageaholic caregiver was in the mood to take out their rage on me, and if I did anything but sit there and allow it, like if I had a human response like fear or tears or anything other than just simply being a receptacle for their rage, then I would be shamed and even blamed for their rage. So this is huge to put words to. At least for me it is. For me, it's been a key part of my healing journey that's helped me move forward after being sort of stuck for a couple of decades. I didn't realize that I was that there were, like, it gave me words to realize that being expected to be a receptacle for someone else's rage, and then, 30 minutes later, they're happy about something. And then if you're not matching their happiness, they're asking you what's wrong with you. Like, there's something must be wrong with you because you're not grateful that I'm not, that I'm happy. So the mindfuckery that is involved with rageaholic parenting and the freeze state that a child goes into when this level of terror is flung at them, and then the flip of the script and the toggle and the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like, now all of a sudden I'm happy. And then we are likely still in a frozen state from being terrified from their rage, and we're afraid to emote or do anything wrong. And so what typically would end up happening I won't say for everyone, but I can only speak for myself. Then if I wasn't happy instantly, I was ungrateful. I was a selfish brat who was ungrateful, which at that point I would cry because I didn't know what I did wrong. And then the rage would come back and they would say, "You want me to give you something to cry about?" So the mindfuckery involved with that whole dyad that I just described for you, that little vignette, if you experience that on a day-to-day basis with caregivers who are abusing substances, numbing, stuffing, avoiding, workaholic, alcoholic, drug addict, just garden variety, whatever you want to call it, what this does to us as adults is because of the level of shame and confusion surrounding big emotions or emotions in general, we can tend to either overshare with strangers because we're just so grateful that someone isn't raging at us. This must be a safe enough person, so I'm just going to overshare and connect with this person in an unboundaried way because at least I'm not terrified of them. Or what it can also cause us to do is it can cause us to bail and leave or completely abandon a friendship if the other person has a natural human response to something and shows one moment of something that could possibly be a precursor to the rage that we experienced growing up. So when we stuff down, without knowing it, all of the natural human emotions that are involved in being a receptacle for someone's rage, and then being expected to turn on a dime and just be able to immediately turn on the smile and the happiness and be grateful that we're not being verbally abused and raged at, what ends up happening is we become terrified of humans. And the way our terror shows up takes on a life of its own. It's unique as your fingerprint. We don't realize, we oftentimes do not realize that we are terrified of humans. But if you are at a YouTube channel that is made possible by the Foundation for Post-Traumatic Healing and Complex Trauma Research, you are likely healing CPTSD from repeated relational trauma. And what that looks like is people are very, very, very people-y. Humans are scary. They are messy. And they can act one way one minute and another way another minute. And that's confusing. And then we shame the shit out of ourselves for not knowing how to be a human, because at the allocated time for a human to learn how to be a human is during our developmental years, right? From the time we're born, we require mirroring from a regulated, safe enough other that helps us to light up our mirror neurons so that we can learn that we exist, that we're real. They gaze upon us with delight, and then we feel delightful. They smile at us, and we smile back. They hold us. They provide safety, nurturance, care, sustenance, belonging. And what that does is it instills in us a sense of actual being, like we become a human being. Before we're born, we're in the womb, and we are simply human. But then when we are born, we are then out here in the world being human. We are a human being, right? And the only way we know how to be human is based on what the other, the primary caregiver, shows us about ourselves. And if the primary object or the primary caregiver is not gazing upon us with delight and happiness and tenderness and safety and helping us to learn how to soothe, if they're not soothing us so that we can learn how to self-soothe, if they're not regulated and then helping us to learn how to regulate, then that whole missing piece right there that I just described of learning how to be a human, what that ends up turning into is adults in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, walking around on two legs in a body, unsure of how to be human. Because we're like, well, why is being a human so hard? I don't know how to relate. I can't do peopling today. Peopling is hard because I feel like an alien. I don't feel like a human. Like, why everybody else does all these random things in the world, like all of their daily chores, and they go to the market and they shop and they do meal prep and they get the oil changed and get the gasoline in the car, and they go to work and they're productive members of society, and they have healthy, sustainable relationships, and they have families, and they make it look so easy. But everything in my life has been really, 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 really hard. And I just must be doing it wrong. Something must be wrong with me. And where does that message come from? Oh, wait, I know. About 15 minutes ago, I started talking about how if we are the receptacle of someone's rage, and then they flip on a dime and they're happy 5 minutes later, and we don't get happy with them, they tell us that something must be wrong with us. We're doing it wrong. We don't know how to human. So if any of this is ringing any bells for you, this book that you see a picture of on the screen, this book is going to untangle all that for you. This book addresses every possible way that a human who wasn't raised in a way that was warm, accepting, and nurturing, if we didn't experience safety and belonging consistently and reliably from our primary caregivers, then we never developed a healthy sense of self-worth, and that means that we don't know how to human. Peopling is hard. Adulting is hard. And the reason adulting is hard is because we didn't learn how to do life during our developmental years. We may have been busy being the receptacle for someone's rage or indifference, ambiguity, emotional neglect. And that is what I'm going to read to you today. We are on page 253, picking up where we left off last week. And it's just a tiny little psychoeducational piece about arrested emotional development that touches on everything I just shared with you. But this book, what I'm trying to say, in short, is that if any of what I just said is ringing any bells for you whatsoever, then Pete Walker addresses this from a relational perspective, a behavioral perspective, a cognitive perspective, an emotional perspective, a somatic perspective, and a spiritual perspective. There's something for everyone who has experienced repeated relational trauma, often beginning in childhood, but not always. There is something for everyone in this book. The deeper I get into this book, the more I realize that I needed this book. And yes, before someone watching on a replay or here with us now, yes, before someone mentions it, yes, this book does contain a lot of the content from complex PTSD from surviving to thriving and the Tao of fully feeling, those two books. What's also true is everything in this book has been framed within the 6 dimensions, and it is by far the most accessible version of the work of Pete Walker that he has put out into the world to date. Period, full stop. Does he have the book all about the Tao of fully feeling, harvesting grief, harvesting forgiveness from grief? Yes. Does he have the complex PTSD from surviving to thriving book for all of us? Yes, he does. Does he have his memoir and I'll just put and it's so much more than a memoir, like homesteading? Yes. But what this book does is this book gives guidance to those of us who have been healing for either a day or a decade or multiple days or multiple decades. And he gives us tools with handles so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. Because guess what one of the symptoms is for CPTSD? Chronic overwhelm. And chronic overwhelm can cause a shame spiral, which can then dissolve us into a puddle of a would-be human that's hiding under the bed covers because they just feel like everything is so hard. Why is everything so hard? I'm never going to heal. Because the shame spiral that, like, if we are struggle busing our way through our day, if we do that often enough, it can fling us into a shame spiral, which really is an emotional flashback. And it brings us right back to those times when we couldn't figure out why we felt so different from everyone when we were growing up. Why do we feel like we were so othered? So different than, so less than, so othered. That is an emotional flashback. That is a shame spiral. So this book, with its 6 dimensions, provides a framework to combat any type of overwhelm that healing CPTSD brings along with it as part of its symptomatology. It gives us tools with handles, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. So, all that being said, I'm going to read to you right now just a little piece on psychoeducation about arrested emotional development, picking up where we left off last week. And we're going to end our time together tonight with a little piece on specifically emotional neglect, because it doesn't get talked about enough. It really is one of the most common causes of complex PTSD, and it flies under the radar because we can't point to it and say, look what they did. They said this, they did this. Because emotional neglect in and of itself isn't something that you can necessarily, unless you are quite adept at navigating complex situations, which for a complex trauma survivor, that is difficult. So emotional neglect is something that is so insidious. It's truly one of the most confusing aspects of CPTSD. So I'm gonna read to you, and then we're gonna end our time with a tiny little piece on emotional neglect, and then we're gonna wrap up once again talking about the grieving process and how the 4 different areas that Pete Walker calls the 4 key transformative processes of grieving. That's what we'll end on tonight. And then next week, we're going to dive deeper into how to actually do it. Okay? So I know we have a lot to cover in not a lot of time. So please forgive me for going over time. Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and begin reading, and then I will check in with you before we end. And again, just thank you for being brave. Thank you for choosing to show up for you tonight. Seriously. I see you. I honor you. I honor your process. I honor your journey. It takes a lot of courage to face all of these things that we're talking about. They're so confusing and so painful and so overwhelming. So please just know, wherever you find yourself, you're not alone. I see you. I get you. I got you. I am you. And it gets better. Okay? It does get better. So here we go. Page 255. Pete says, developmental delays and aberrant developments in the emotional dimension of life are most frequently products of traumatized children struggling to survive, to minimize punishment, to gain safety and acceptance, and to keep themselves afloat above a sea of potentially disabling abandonment pain. Such factors typically, dysfunctionally, steer traumatized children into the salvation fantasy strategy of getting rid of any feelings or emotions that are less than shiny, pleasant, or happy. Now, therapists need to patiently and kindly help survivors to reject the dominant paradigms of emotional perfectionism, which is kind of like a don't worry, be happy sort of a vibe, right? And therapists will help relieve the survivors of huge burdens of needless pain and shame by helping them see what an impossible, destructive mandate the whole don't worry, be happy thing is. Trying to always be up, 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 and happy, happy, happy is not only counter-therapeutic, but it's also the polar opposite of genuine emotional intelligence. I'm going to read that sentence again because someone needs it twice. Okay? Trying to always be up, 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 or happy, happy, happy is not only counter-therapeutic, but also the polar opposite of genuine emotional intelligence. Ironically, this bogus pseudo-philosophy often becomes the gateway drug addiction that is necessary to always keep it up. Now, effective therapists help survivors by modeling that all emotional states are normal, valuable, and subject to uncontrollable fluctuations. This, of course, depends on them not being expressed in hurtful ways. Acceptance of all of one's feelings is necessary to be a whole, healthy, and emotionally intelligent human being. The one exception to this is toxic shame, which is not a normal, inborn human affect. Toxic shame is usually best transmuted back into blame and imaginatively returned to those who installed it. Now I'm going to pause here. Remember, toxic shame is that feeling that we have that we are like black on the inside, that something must be wrong with us. We were like born wrong, or we're walking around and everybody can tell how disgusting and horrible and terrible and scary and awful we are. That is toxic shame. And that is not how we were born. That was installed into us by the primary object, the primary caregiver. And it was malware installed into the hard drive. And now we are doing our solid best to remove the virus, remove the malware, so that we can have a clean and effective operating system. Okay? So back to Pete Walker. Toxic shame is usually best transmuted back into blame and imaginatively returned to those who installed it. Okay? Therapists help survivors to repair their stalled emotional development by enlightening them about 5 traumatizing childhood dynamics that may still impair the healthy evolutionary development of their psyches. And these are the 5. Okay? First, chronic anxiety. CPTSD is an anxiety disorder. Untreated victims of childhood trauma can be perpetually stuck in the fear and anxiety that parental rejection foisted upon them in their childhood. Depending on the amount and frequency of trauma that they experienced, survivors are racked with an angst and social alienation that can fluctuate on a continuum that stretches from social anxiety to social phobia. Most survivors relate and interact from an unconscious belief that everyone is dangerous. Number 2, the inner critic. Survivors are continuously persecuted by a virulent inner critic that uses contempt, which is a poisonous brew of anger and disgust, to disable them with fear and toxic shame, respectively. This critic, as seen earlier on in the book, is a product of traumatizing parents who install it as they repetitively disapprove of their children to make them easier to control, exploit, and or ignore. Number 3, toxic shame. Continuous parental rejection strands CPTSD survivors in toxic shame. He's saying that we're stranded. Like we are stranded in the CPTSD and the toxic shame, right? Which is the shame on steroids. It's an excruciatingly painful state of self-alienation, self-hate, and self-disgust. The tiniest miscue or faux pas can trigger us, survivors, into feeling worthless, ugly, pitiful, useless, and abhorrent, even when we are alone at home. Number 4, emotional perfectionism. As noted tonight earlier in our discussion, most survivors and members of the general population have been brainwashed into emotional perfectionism. They are forced to believe that their less than happy feelings are fatal flaws that must be eliminated by any means. And number 5, repetition compulsion. We, survivors, are unconsciously compelled to gravitate towards people who emotionally punish, abandon, and manipulate us. Such people are often as hard-hearted as our parents were about any display of unhappy feelings. So we accept the toxic shaming of their emotional pain, of our emotional pain, because they consciously believe that abuse and neglect are the price tags for belonging. So we accept the toxic shaming of these people, the repetition compulsion, the people that we experience as hard-hearted, abandoning, and manipulative. We accept this toxic shame because it's familiar. We are familiar with it from when we were being raised, and we're familiar with the emotional pain. So we unconsciously believe that abuse and neglect are the price for belonging. We don't even know we're doing it. So, with our therapist, it is especially effective when our therapists help us to comprehend, recognize, challenge, and deconstruct all 5 of these childhood legacies: the chronic anxiety, the inner critic, the toxic shame, the emotional perfectionism, and repetition compulsion. Okay? When our therapists help us to grieve out the pain that these programs created and are still creating, this is the remedy. Our therapists can guide us to anger and cry and verbally vent about what we've been through. Pete Walker calls them travesties that were installed in us in childhood. We desperately need encouragement and guidance to extinguish the self-defeating programs that were ingrained in us when we were defenseless children, unaware of how we were being conditioned. And Pete ends this section by saying, when human beings are hurt, part of them feels mad and part of them feels sad. Allowing them to cry and be mad about being hurt releases the terrible anxiety that comes from suppressing and hiding the pain. Cultivating emotional health can be challenging for untherapized therapists. Please don't miss this. This one paragraph is where Pete Walker talks about the therapists that end up re-traumatizing us. So if you need just if you've ever been re-traumatized by a therapist, this paragraph is for you. And I'm raising my hand over here. He says, at the bottom of page 257, Pete says, cultivating emotional health in survivors can be challenging for untherapized therapists. This is because most Westerners are conditioned to only value the pleasant emotions, especially happiness, joy, and love. Even those from good enough, high EQ families often unconsciously buckle under to peer pressure and suppress all feelings that are not pleasant. Once again, and he underscores this, once again, sadness, anger, fear, and depression are often healthy, helpful internal messages that someone or something is or was harmful to us. So, super, super, super important for each of us to know that we have been programmed. If we are here healing CPTSD, which I'm assuming you are, it's the title of the video, we have been programmed. And what this book has done for me, someone who has read every word Pete Walker has ever written, ever, what it's done is it's put things in order, so that I can easily find it and apply what works. And breaking it down into 6 different dimensions, I feel is probably one of the most helpful things, because he's such a prolific writer, because he has millions and millions of words published on the internet and in books. It is very, very, very helpful to find the most helpful ones broken down into categories so they can be applied, right? So we talked a little bit at the beginning of our time together tonight about the emotional abuse and being receptacles for our parents' rage. This is a piece right here that I'm going to share with you. It's brief, but it's super, 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 super key. This has been one of the most validating pieces of the book for me, because of it's titled Emotional Neglect. It's bottom of page 258. But for those of us who are here in this community and we've been shamed and blamed and ridiculed and scapegoated by our families of origin because we point to a behavior and they say, what are you talking about? You should be grateful. I used to get beatings every day, and I used to get knocked clear into next week by my family. You don't see me complaining. And they discount the power of emotional neglect. It's very invalidating and minimizing and re-traumatizing. So for any of us who have been minimized, invalidated, and re-traumatized by our family of origin because there was a lack of physical or maybe even verbal abuse, this one section here that I'm about ready to share with you is truly, truly, truly one of the most validating portions of this particular chapter, at the very least, if not the book. So bottom of page 258, Pete says, emotional neglect alone often causes CPTSD. When children feel constantly ignored and unwelcome to approach their caretakers for any kind of help, a perfectionistic, endangerment-driven critic gradually usurps control of their psyches. Emotionally neglecting parents shape their children into not asking, not needing, and not even wanting comfort, not wanting any type of caring or affection. Such, in air quotes, he uses the word caretakers in air quotes because they truly are not taking care of anyone. Pete says, such caretakers, such so-called caretakers, show no interest in understanding their children or hearing about their experiences. This typically includes zero receptivity to their feelings. There is never any validation of their healthy anger, empathy for their hurts, or apology for injustices. Typically, there is also no shared humor or joy. Emotionally neglectful parents create attachment disorders in their children by failing to radiate warmth, caring, and acceptance to them. As described earlier in this book, truly intimate relationships depend on both verbal and emotional exchanges. In a traumatizing family, however, emoting is not allowed, often even when it is cheerful. Many dysfunctional parents cannot bear it when their children are happier than they are. Such so-called parents also abhor their children's expression of anger and sadness. They typically make quick work of eliminating their emotional expression in very early childhood. They do this by shunning them whenever they show anger, sadness, fear, or depression. Pete says, I vividly remember a client coming out of denial in session as he remembered his mother angrily closing his door in the middle of the night when he woke up crying from a nightmare. Ignoring very young children's angry crying is especially detrimental, as it is their only way of communicating. Infants' first utterances at birth are normal, healthy complaints about their painful eviction from the comfort of the all-providing womb. For the first year or two, angry tears are the only means that kids have of asking for help when they are hurting. This includes the pain of hunger, a chafing diaper, or a lack of being held. Many traumatizing parents extinguish crying and angering in children so quickly that adult survivors have no memory of it. Contrast this with the good enough parents who intuitively understand that emotions are all that their young ones have to express themselves. Such parents keep their children's emotional expression alive and growing by learning how to interpret their upsets kindly and accurately. As their children mature, they also help them to verbalize their emotional states. Use your words is a current and apt prompt for helping toddlers to learn how to communicate their needs and to evoke empathy for their painful experiences. Life's intrinsic hurtful experiences recurringly make everyone sad and mad sometimes. Our emotional intelligence evolves as we learn to verbally communicate and vent about our disappointments and our misfortunes. Therapists help survivors to develop their emotional intelligence by guiding them to discharge their pain through verbal ventilation. And with enough practice and sessions, they can learn how to combine their words and their feelings to release their hurt in a way that soothes them. At its best, it offers the same reciprocal gift to the listener and often promotes deeper and warmer connection with safe enough others. So next week, we are going to talk about the grieving process, appropriate grieving that each and every one of us must experience if we are going to heal CPTSD. And Pete breaks it down into 4 categories: crying, angering, verbally ventilating, and fully feeling. And he talks about how we can receive support from trauma-informed therapists. And he talks a lot about different modalities and how grieving and being able to put words and pain and communicate that pain, how that really is the heart of emotional intelligence. And even if we do end up deciding today, next year, or in 30 years that we don't want to be around other humans, even if we make that conscious decision that we don't want to be around other humans, the benefits of emotional intelligence, even for just relating to ourselves or our art, our craft, The benefits are innumerous, they're infinite. So even if you are a human who doesn't like other humans, even if people are way too peoply for you, and we don't, even if you are in a place where you don't want to connect with other humans, I see you, I honor you, I honor your process. And what's also true is, I bet if that's you, there is something you absolutely love to create or to pour yourself into, even if it's just for you. It could be art, it could be singing, dancing, cooking, poetry. It could be watercolors, doodling. It could be hand-blown glass, jewelry making, music of any kind, drumming. It could be running, walking, any type of movement. Whatever it is that you love to pour yourself into. It could be video games. I have some really dear friends, my son even. I mean, my son is now like doing a lot of things in life. He's a dad and a husband, and he's graduated medical school, and he's in residency for medical practice. But he loves to pour himself into his video games. It's literally an art. And Magic the Gathering. He's always loved Magic the Gathering ever since he was a teenager. He pours all of himself into being a dad to my grandson, to being a husband to my daughter-in-law, to being the best Magic the Gathering deck builder, or being the best gamer, right? He's even built his own tower. So emotional intelligence requires that we become intimately familiar with every single one of the emotions that lives inside of us, particularly anger, sadness, pain. It can be turned into something, and it can be the most vibrant thing you have ever seen or experienced in your entire life, and that is transformative. That is emotional intelligence. And that is what we're going to talk about next week. So I'm so excited. So excited we're doing this. This book has really lit a fire in me to go back and continue to read everything that Pete is putting out into the world. It's truly saving lives. So let me see. My chat box is frozen, so why am I frozen? Oh, there's a few more of you here. I didn't get a chance to greet you. Hello, Kitty. I see your name. I didn't get a chance to say hi to you earlier. Hello, Nadine. Oh, hello. Hello to anybody else I didn't greet by name. I can't see everyone. I can only see just a couple of lines here, but for anyone I didn't say hello to, I'm so glad you're here. So glad that you chose to be here with us tonight. This is an important discussion, and I think that it is really appropriately timed for those of us who've sort of felt stuck and frozen in time and paralyzed by just, I don't know, a lot of this is reminding me that there are words to describe what it is that I went through. And I think that alone in and of itself is sometimes all the validation I really need, right? But I'll end with this. this community here, these Mondays that we spend together, that we've been doing every week for almost 11 years, these moments right here, for me, they are they're ingrained in like who I am as a human, because no matter what else is going on in the world, I know that every single Monday I'm going to be here and I'm going to be surrounded by a handful or two or three or four handfuls of other humans who have experienced the confusing mindfuckery that is CPTSD, repeated relational trauma. The level of safety that we have created here in this space, the level of belonging that we have created here in this space, it's something I get to enjoy every day of my life because I'm over at the foundation and I get to be there every day. And I get to experience what this feels like every day of my life because of that. And I'm grateful for that. But just know that what you experience when you come here, it doesn't happen on accident. You're not here by accident. At the very least, you had to click on an app on your device and choose to stay. But what likely happened is you set a reminder in your calendar, or it's just become a part of your rhythm if you've been here for the last 10, 11 years with me every week. So please just know that this feeling of safe enoughness, this feeling of belonging, it exists. It's not just here. We have this away from social media also. But even if that's not something that anyone in the whole world gets to experience, this is a place where it will always, where it happens. This is a place right here. And that is something. Right? That is something. So thank you. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for allowing me to be in yours. And thank you if you choose to join us away from social media over the foundation. I'll put a link in the chat box. Don't forget there's a code though, because I want you to get 50% off. It's like $5. The code is Monday50. Just the word Monday 50. Good night, John Harvey. Thank you so much for being here. I love you all so much. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Oh, thank you, Jen. Thank you, Mary, Kitty, Donna, GS. Hello, I didn't say hello to you earlier. Nadine. Candida, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Please be extra kind and patient and gentle with yourself, as Jeffrey would say, because you're worth it. And I will see you away from social media this week. Otherwise, I will see you back here next Monday and every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Okay? Good night, everyone.